So a few years ago, TC, our managing editor, built a gaming desktop, but it's kind of out of date and it's definitely not going to hold up for Battlefield 5. So let's build a new one. You can build a gaming desktop for around $1,000, but I want to go all out, so I spent around $2,000. Damn! PC like this is going to be able to play most games at ultra settings. So what do you need to build a desktop? Well, of course, first you need a table.
Sí. Mi mente es superior a la de los demás!
Preferably not metal. If it's going to be metal, have an anti-static working surface layered on top of it, a thermal paste applicator,
What?
An Allen wrench, some tweezers to tighten up the wires, a Swiss Army knife which hopefully has a Phillips head screwdriver in it,
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never.
and last but not least, an anti-static bracelet, which is to protect you and the parts.
Eso no es una pulsera antiestática. Esto es una pulsera antiestática. Y solo se usan cuando la computadora está encendida, si no, no tiene nada de utilidad.
We have a lot of boxes and a lot of PC parts, so it's best if you unbox them, isolate the parts that you really need, place items into the case, and make sure that they all fit, and then start working. And now we're really going to start building by adding the motherboard in.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Some notes about installing motherboards: they're really delicate, you should be really careful with them. And screw in with confidence, but also don't screw in too hard, otherwise you could crack the board. I chose Asus's Z370 motherboard for two main reasons. One, it has built-in Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and also it has support for NVMe SSDs, meaning you can get really fast SSDs that are really easy to install. Pay close attention to the brace that goes at the back of the computer. You always have to make sure that you really hammer it in, because there's no screw, it really just has to go outside of the case and clasp onto the frame. And this is very important because otherwise you can't align the motherboard correctly with the holes. We're just going to start installing all 8 screws.
No, 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 no.
So next we're going to install the RAM on the motherboard. I chose Corsair's 16GB Vengeance LED RAM for two main reasons. One, it has LEDs and we do like lights in our gaming desktops. Secondly, it's pretty fast RAM. It's 2666 megahertz, I believe. So it's pretty fast, and this motherboard supports that speed, which is most important. Open the slots first, and just aligning the stick with the middle of the strip, not with the end, and just lining that up with the logo. So once you hear that solid clasp and you don't see the gold connectors on the side anymore, that's when you know the RAM is in.
Como vemos en la instalación del chico, él puso los dos sticks de RAM uno al lado del otro. Esto es totalmente equivocado, ya que desperdicia el dual channel del RAM. Cuando tenés dual channel, los RAM tienen que estar pues en su respectiva posición, A0 y B0, o A1 y B1, si no perdés fluidez y la estabilidad de la memoria.
Step 3, we're going to install the hard drive, or in this case, the NVMe SSD. I chose this format of solid state drive so that I could input it into the motherboard without having to worry about extra wires or putting it in a separate part of the case and just getting really messy. This is from Kingston, and it's 480 gigabytes, so it's not a lot, but you can always upgrade this and swap it out, and it's only held down by one screw and the latch, so it's really simple and really straightforward. Speed for gaming is important when it comes to a hard drive. You want files to write quickly and you want games to load quickly, so that's why it's best if you use an SSD. Okay, so step 4, we're going to install the graphics card. I chose PNY's GTX 1080, which is overclocked, and so it's a pretty easy installation. You're just going to find the gold connectors, and you're going to line this bracket with the back end bracket of your PC case. Now, which lane you choose depends entirely on what other parts you're going to put in the system. I'm just going to pick the top one because the SSD is at the bottom and I don't want to cover it. I just think it looks nice.
¡Ay, pero qué idiota!
No, no es meto la tarjeta gráfica donde quiero porque parece más lindo. Cada tarjeta va en un puerto PCIe que corresponda a ese. En este caso, este GPU es PCI 16 y le pegó la posibilidad. De lo contrario, no vería nada en la pantalla. Es importante leer el manual y ver en dónde se coloca cada componente.
Click down. Power supply time. I chose Corsair's 850 watt power supply because I need enough headroom for ray tracing GPUs when they come out, and I don't want to have to upgrade it again. So all you have to do is take the brick and make sure that you align it with these little insulating pads so that the power supply doesn't short circuit and come into contact with the rest of the system. So just take it in, slide it in nice and easy until you have a snug fit, and then shift it to the back and make sure it's right up against the frame.
Stop it. Get some help.
Para empezar, esos no son parches de instalación. Segundo, porque la fuente esté tocando el gabinete no quiere decir que va a entrar en corto. Y por último, ¿puso la fuente al revés? Va a recalentar toda la computadora. ¡Qué idiota!
Now you just take the required screws and you tighten and screw in. So next step, we're going to install the CPU cooler. In this case, it's going to go on the top end of the case, and we're just going to have the hose hang out for a little while until we install the processor, which is going to come a little later. Always be sure to try to place it in the system first before you install it, because you can see it takes up a lot of space. But in this case, no pun intended, it fits in perfectly, and we're gonna start screwing it in. And so there's nothing special about this screwing in process. They're just really long screws because they go through the entire frame of the cooler, and they take forever.
No, los tornillos largos son porque en realidad primero van los ventiladores, luego se coloca el radiador por debajo de ellos. Así como acaba de hacer ahora, terminó perforando su radiador. Así que ahora no solo tiene un ladrillo que no funciona, sino un radiador perforado.
So next up, cables. Every power supply is going to come with a big bag of Velcro cables.
Eso es equivocado. No todas las fuentes vienen con cables sueltos. Esos son los modulares. Después tenés los semimodulares, que tiene el de 24 pines y tal vez otros cables ya integrados. Y la fuente de alimentación normal o básico en el que todos los cables vienen integrados.
It's kind of daunting at first, so you always have to find the ones that are going to fit. In this case, you need to match those cables with the correct descriptions on the power supply. Next step is we're connecting the power supply to the motherboard with the 24-pin cable. We're just matching that cable from the motherboard, threading it through the back, and attaching the 24-pin header to the power supply so that we can have one of the connections complete. The next few additions will be for the GPU, for any specific ports that the case has, for any lighting that the case has, the CPU cooler, anything else really. We're installing the CPU, the heart of the computer or the brain, depending on how you look at it. So to do this, we're just going to remove the plastic covering that they put on the motherboard. We're just going to take this little plastic part out. We'll just toss that out of here.
No, 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 no.
Nunca hagan eso. No tiren ninguna caja, ninguna pieza, nada. Si algún componente falla, si tiraron la caja, recibo, partes, no podrán tener una devolución y solo tendrán un componente roto.
And now we have an exposed CPU holder, or rather slot, on the motherboard. And we're going to use the CPU applicator. This is a special little part that not everyone may get, but this motherboard that we got from ASUS definitely does have. It's called a CPU installation tool. It makes it really useful if you want to install a Core i7 hexa-core CPU.
Just stop. Just stop it. Stop. No.
Yeah, we've got one, and it's an 8th generation chip, and it's ready to go, and it supports overclocking. So what having this little installer does for you is it's basically a brace that you can apply right to the CPU and light it up with the triangles that you'll see on the bottom left corners. And this will make it easier for us to apply it to the motherboard and then apply thermal paste and then apply a CPU cooler on top. And we're just going to carefully lean it down into the system and make sure that everything lines up and we're going to clasp down on it and we'll be good to go. So we're about to apply thermal paste to the CPU. Every CPU cooler actually comes with a bit of thermal paste already neatly applied in a circle around it, but it's usually not enough. It's good, essentially PC building practice to have a little bit extra and layer it on top of the CPU.
Esa no es buena práctica. Vos no sabés hace cuánto está esa pasta térmica ahí. Buena práctica es agarrar un poco de alcohol y sacar la pasta térmica vieja aplicando la nueva.
The final portion is to add the CPU cooler to the top end of the processor. So you're going to see that there are 4 brackets.
No, mirá cuánto le puso. Oh, eso después se va a ir por todos lados, va a arruinar todos los componentes. No. Cuando aplicás pasta térmica es una gota. Si querés ser muy generoso, podés ponerle 2, pero no le pongas más, es suficiente.
Or rather like screws in here with brackets and holders right here. And they're going to keep the cooler raised off the processor, but it's also going to be close enough to actually physically come in contact with it, like basically keep it cool. Take thumb screws like this and just screw them on. So now that our internals are done, we're going to put all the panels back on, which is the top glass, side glass, front glass, and of course the back panel where all of this fun stuff is happening. So we've fully built the PC, everything's put together, and we got to the post screen. So what's next? Well, you need a USB flash drive with your Windows installation media on it, and of course a license key. So I plugged that up, installed Windows in a couple of minutes, installed a bunch of drivers, and now we have a fully functioning gaming PC ready to run some games. Right now I've got Armor 3 running at maximum settings, native resolution, which is 1080p HD. And it's running pretty smoothly. Like, I'm averaging 70 and 80 FPS, and this is normally like a very intensive game to run. And it's still doing a pretty good job. So right now I'm playing League of Legends. It's one of my favorite games. I'm actually playing against a bot, and I'm distracted, so I'm not actually doing so well. But otherwise, like, this is pretty much what you would see me do on a gaming computer. Test stuff out, and hopefully have really high frame rates like I am right now. I'm averaging 120 FPS, and that's only because I've actually locked the game to that frame rate, because I can get around 300 FPS playing League on maximum settings, which is a little bit absurd, and you don't really need that, so I've locked it.
Are you sure about that?
Bromas de lado. La razón por la cual puso límite al juego es porque seguramente su monitor es 144 Hz, lo cual quiere decir que si su FPS supera eso, va a producirse lo que se llama ghosting, o en otras palabras, la pantalla empieza a repetir la imagen por todos lados y funciona mal. No porque es absurdo tener tanto.